It's 6:37, and we're convening the Grafton Accessibility Advisory Commission meeting on April 8th. Um, all right, so I'm Alexis Henry, the chair of the commission, and I will be taking attendance to begin with. So, uh, Tracy Sharkey, you are listed as the town of Grafton, but
Yeah, I'm not sure. I need to change that. I need to log in. This is my work computer, so I am here and present.
okay, Paula Cherno,
Here.
Aaron Phil, sorry. Throwing Urban. Aaron, you're muted.
Here.
So just unmute. Roger Trahan,
Here.
Christy Procty, Proctor, and Alexis Henry here. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to pull up the agenda and share that with everyone, and hopefully everyone can see this. And let me close. All right. Can everybody see the agenda for tonight?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So just a couple of announcements quickly. April is Autism Acceptance Month, and we have a new banner on our webpage. Did everybody get a chance to take a look at it?
Yes.
Yeah, it looks very nice. Thank you to Amy Berry in the town clerk office for assisting with getting that put up. I think you maybe also all got the notice that tomorrow night there is the Grafton Common Traffic Study open house. Just make everybody's aware of that. I don't know, is anybody planning on attending?
I actually am planning on attending. I had a few comments and observations over the years. But from an accessibility standpoint, um, I don't know if anyone has any uh, comments about things they'd want me to put forth, but I can say that it would be nice to have a few more accessible parking spaces. And I think also that there's an issue with one of the near the Jerome Wheelock statue that for years the crosswalk has led to a curb, 4-inch
Yeah.
granite curbing. So I don't know if anyone else has any accessibility issues. I'll comment that I do like how the big crosswalk in between the two buildings, 1 and 2 Grafton Common, allows you to press the button and it's lit and allows traffic to
Yeah.
be notified that someone's there. So people who may not be as quick or nimble crossing the street have an added level of safety. So I don't know if anyone else wanted to put forth anything that they would want brought up from an accessibility standpoint. Um, if so, I'll mention it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Can I ask what the whole purpose of this meeting is about? I mean,
Actually,
what are
that's
the
a good question.
problems?
Paul, I don't know what, and I don't know, Tracy, if you have any insights into this. I've gotten a notice just about it in the mail and through email. I mean, I live right off the common, so I don't know if everyone in town got this notice. I got it.
I got it.
This is part of it. It's a grant. It's a grant that can only be spent for this purpose. And I think this is the third go round. Things cost money, and I think this is the third go round regarding a traffic safety study.
As in traffic flow?
Traffic flow.
typically
Yeah,
about
traffic flow.
Traffic safety? I don't know if there's been any conversation about, changing the flow of traffic or adding additional stop signs,
I don't know what 25 grand gets you these days, but it's sort of looked upon, as far as I understand, as free money. That I don't think anyone internally said, okay, we need to come up with 25K, town of Grafton, and spend it on something that's been done twice before. This
Yeah.
was a grant that came to us, and I don't know whether it just fell on our lap or whether we applied for this grant, but it's a freebie as far as I understand, and so therefore we're rolling with it. I would presume in that, and if this isn't the case, I'll bring it up, that the two other studies will be dusted off and looked at as part of this, as part of a comprehensive look about, yeah, flow and patterns and um, you know, how things have changed with the increasing population. But I had a number of comments that I will bring to this meeting regarding, sight lines and just people's habits in general. Um, a lot of this, I think, has to do with people's driving habits versus the layout. So, um, but if anyone would want to feed me any comments, I can bring them. Um, put put forth tomorrow night.
I've always thought of the town common as being an oversized roundabout, um, which I think if they treated it that way, they'd have traffic flow always going to the right. Um, I don't know. It just sounds very complex, but it's simple.
Well, and I'll mention this is that from a historic standpoint and a not only historic standpoint, but um, the war memorials. All right, there's certain things that shall go untouched. Right, aside from the fact that there's certain utilities in certain places that you wouldn't, you know, disrupt necessarily.
Right.
The war memorials. If you were allowed to, I think the war memorials, their placement, um, pose some of this kind of issue of
Mm,
the
yeah.
disjointedness of the traffic flow. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't think their placement is in play. But you're right, Paul. And in many respects, it's a roundabout and a free for all. But let me
Yeah.
know anyone if they have any comments. I think more related to accessibility for tomorrow night. And
So it is part of the Massachusetts Downtown Initiative to support an updated Grafton Common traffic and safety study about the infrastructure, traffic flow, transportation best practices.
okay,
So I think it's going to update what we have currently, and it's headed up by the planning department.
okay, all right.
Will it? I just don't want 'em I just don't want it to become an overcomplex problem from various points of view. It concerns me.
Fair.
Yeah, I think it's going to update what we currently have and bring up concerns for safety there.
Okay.
Okay, I'm wondering if the new development that's happening just down the road, you know, may have some implications for the traffic.
I think there'll
The
be more
development
foot
of trans-
traffic. There'll
Huh?
certainly be more foot traffic.
Well, more foot, yeah. And I think your point is well taken, Roger, about the crosswalks. Not all of them are as um well defined or adhered to. The one where you cross over from the common to over toward the library. Most people don't even know there's a crosswalk there. It seems to me when I walk there. All right, let me if there are any other comments, we'll keep going. Because we do have Adam with us today. So external correspondence. I'm sure no one is unhappy that the remote public meeting authorization has been extended for another 2 years. So I think that's good news. Maybe we can quickly go through the meeting minutes. Christy, do you need us to pull up? Do you want me to scroll? I'll scroll down. They should be. I did send that just as a side note. I think you all have it. I sent the meeting packet, but it didn't look like it got posted. I checked this afternoon on the website. The full meeting packet was not posted. The agenda was there, but not the full meeting packet with our. So Let's review the minutes from last month, March 11th. Does anybody have any edits for Christie? I know I have one.
I move that we approve the draft minutes of the meeting of March 11th, 2025.
I'll second that.
Okay, any comments?
I have one, and it's just a got a lettering, a spelling thing on old business 3D. The paragraph that starts with Christy Proctor brought up, last word in line 4 that continues to line 5, the word town meeting is capitalized. Town meeting. We've always, when referring to the spring and fall town meetings, so that if you could just capitalize those first two.
Me to scroll down. Did you get that, Christy?
Thank you. And that was the only thing. Thank you, Christy, for always taking awesome minutes.
I just have one on item 3. Let's see, meeting minutes. It says February 11th, 2024. It's actually 2025.
Oh,
Wow.
Right.
oops.
I think that was my typo. That was my mistake to begin with.
Oh yeah,
Anything-
because the night, yeah, it mentions 25 right beneath it. Yeah.
Right. That was the only thing that I caught. Right here. It should say 25.
So
Okay.
is there anywhere else then
I
where it
didn't
would say
see it.
24?
I didn't see it, but let me page through again. I'm just looking here. I don't think so. I think that was the only
Okay.
mistake, and I think that was from the original agenda.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. All right. So, without any other comments, let's take a vote on accepting the minutes from our March 11th meeting. So, Tracy Sharkey, was that an aye?
Aye.
Paula Turno,
Aye.
Roger Trahan,
Aye.
Christy Proctor,
Aye.
Aaron Fell,
Aye.
and Alexis Henry. Aye. All right. Thank you all. All right. Let me go back up to the agenda. Old business. There's not a lot here other than I will pull together something for May as Mental Health Awareness Month. I really appreciate how helpful the people are in the clerk's office of getting the stuff up. So if anybody has any suggestions, but I'm happy to pull some stuff together. And I was reading somewhere, which I guess March was Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month. Was anybody aware of that?
Yeah, I'm aware. I was aware of it.
Yeah, so I'm sorry for that oversight. So we can add that to our list. Sorry that I was not aware of that. But we'll plan that for next year.
What is that? March is what?
Developmental disabilities, is it Awareness Month? Is that the right?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, so we've got now March, April, May, October, and I think one other. So it's good. Tracy, the next 2 items are for you. And I don't know if you have any update.
I can't see the agenda.
Oh, sorry.
but That's okay. But the complaint form I'm working on, I will have that for our May meeting.
Okay.
What was the other item?
The 2 are the request for accommodation. Can other people see the agenda, or do I have to? Okay. The request for accommodation form and the grievance procedure. Those are the 2 things that are on the
Oh.
agenda.
Okay. I have now I can see it. Somehow I clicked over. Um, yeah, so we have the employee request, and then you wanted to add the ADA grievance procedure on the town's website?
Yes.
Okay, so under our website tab for our commission?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
In other places, but I think it's nice to have it on our page as well.
okay. And do I have a copy of that?
Uh, Christy, do we, I don't know where it is.
I sent that on to Tracy when she first started.
Okay,
So I'll look for it again, Tracy, and get that over to you.
I can take a
Okay.
for the I did the grievance complaint on the portal, similar to an application, but the procedures, I don't know how if I have a procedures, but yeah, if you have it, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you both. Any other old business?
Well, I guess I'll make it new business. I'll wait till new business regarding the school's ADA plan because um, Big Truck Day National Night Out, which I also had taken on regarding contacts, is now under new business. So I'll wait until new business to talk
Okay.
about that.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Um, so under new business, first we have Adam joining us from the Recreation Department. And Adam, do you want to share your slides? I can stop sharing this.
Yeah, I think because I'm a panelist, I can share with my screen, so I will do that.
Okay.
Oh, I have to send a request. So I'm sending a request now.
There you go.
Okay. So first off, good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me. Just want to make sure everybody can see my screen before I start blabbing away over here.
Yep. Looks good.
Great. Okay. So I just wanted to take the chance to come and present the Ferry Street Playground Replacement Project that's being proposed this Springtown meeting and ask for a letter of support from the Accessibility Advisory Commission. So we'll talk a little bit about where we are and where we want to be with this project. So just a quick little background about Ferry Street Playground. The farthest records that I can see about this particular playground is it was built in 2001. Our parks guy, Daryl, thinks it's even older than that. Typically, playground equipment gets a good 20 to 30 years of use, depending upon its frequency. And especially some of the older equipment, it's even closer to 10 to 15 years. So basically, it's at the end of its useful life. There are some parts on the actual equipment that is broken, and you can see in this picture, if you get a big enough screen, there's a little clear globe on the dinosaur. That is currently broken and shattered, and there's no replacement parts for it. So it was removed for safety reasons. Obviously, didn't want to have sharp plastic sticking out for kids, but there's no that product is discontinued, so we won't be able to find a replacement for it. And the timing in regards to how we're able to fund this project is fortuitous. We're just trying to really take advantage of capital budgets and also some CPC funds, which we'll talk about later. So with the help of the Rec Commission and the Rec Department, we participated in a facility strategic plan which focused on 6 properties in town, Ferry Street being one of them. All of this information is available on our website. It's about 80 to 100 page document, so I won't bore you with all the specifics, but Ferry Street was one of the playgrounds that was in dire need of more ADA accessibility in the playground, but also just overall maintenance and improvement. The commission drafted a 5-year capital plan, and this upcoming fiscal year, Ferry Street is the first on our list of improvements for the project. Again, all of this stuff is more specifically available on the website. Feel free to peruse through it. It's a $50,000 document, so I want to get as many eyes on it as possible. So,
Okay.
All right, so project overview. So this is what the playground will look like pending budget approvals. So the hope is that this project will have components on the playground for ages 6 months and up. It looks fairly similar in style to what was done at Norcross. It's the same company that we're using. So a lot of the elements are similar. There are a couple of new elements, as you can see there. Unlike Norcross, where Norcross is kind of like a hybrid between poured in place rubber and playground mulch, this property will be 100% the poured in place surfacing on the property. So this is the gold standard for ADA accessibility, those especially with mobility issues. And also poured in place rubber is actually the safest in the sense of critical fall height. Basically, poured in place rubber, there's a number that any playground surfacing gets given based on how high, or how high somebody can fall without having significant injury. Poured in place surfacing is always ranked highest compared to playground mulch versus grass, sand, etc. So just kind of, outside of just accessibility, but also just for safety, poured in place rubber is the gold standard for surfacing. So next, I'm going to use some animations here. So get ready for some colors and some circles here. So we have a 5 to 12-year-old structure, which is in the red circle on the top right of that picture. It's primarily a climbing element with a slide at the end. There's a 2 to 5-year-old structure, which is kind of like a traverse. It's hard to see from this angle, but basically you start at one end and cross the other. And there's some climbing elements on the side. I also forgot to mention it's cut off by the yellow circle, but there's a little igloo down there, which is good, especially for kids who might need a couple of minutes of just some quiet time, just away from kids, kind of a sensory friendly space. And then in purple is our 6 months, 2-year-old structure, which is similar in style to the one that's currently at Norcross. There's also, again, hard to see with the circles, but there's I forgot what it's called, but it's basically like a rocker available as well for 6 months, 2 years old. And there's a handful of standalone elements very similar to what Norcross has, just some instruments, things kids can grab a mallet and hit and make a noise, things like that. And then also, oops, did I move too quick? There we go. I didn't circle them, but there's plenty of shade and structure elements as well. You can see on the left there, the shade. There's a handful of benches and tables that'll be available as well for people to sit at. So any initial questions? Roger, I think that's your hand.
Yeah. Adam, thank you, by the way, for it's been quite noticeable your efforts and all that you've done regarding this really ramp up, and it's been quite noticeable a ramp up in addressing all of these projects through an accessibility lens. And so I want to say kudos to you. My question had to do with signage, whether there will be delineated signage. I think of the Gordon Place or something similar at the corner of Massasoit and to Blythewood in Worcester.
Yes.
So the Blythewood Park. Yep.
Yeah, and there's signage that notes, okay, this is for these particular ages.
Yeah, so Norcross has that, and so this will as well. It's hard to see in this
Okay.
picture. I'll see if I can. You might be able to see it in the 2D rendering, which I'll show you. But
Okay.
each area has it's probably about 3.5 foot high, and it's a semicircle. It just says this. This is designed for ages, etc. And I know in Norcross in particular, and I'm not sure if it's on here for these structures, but in Norcross, each of the 3 to 5-year-old structure and the 6 or 5 to 12-year-old structure has stickers on like the support beam saying, this is for ages, blah, blah, blah. So it's plastered around a lot on each of those structures. So
I do have a
Thank you.
question
Sure.
about the shade element.
Mhm.
How will it stand up to wind like what we have today?
yeah, so they basically they dig pretty deep in the ground to create a lot of these support structures. I can't give you the specifics on the feet. They go down underneath the dirt, but they do concrete casters and that kind of thing.
Good.
They go pretty deep in the ground to keep them safe.
Great.
And I had one more question regarding, I don't know if, all right, so I'm aware that this is one of the most used parks in for a reason, because the baseball is the Little League park the ball field is used so much that some of the little ones, are being kept busy. They're too young to watch their older siblings play, and so they bring them secondary to that activity, and it gets a lot of use. And I'm thinking of the bathroom. That is it contiguous to this the perimeter space that we're seeing here? And is that an accessible uh, bathroom?
So there is, when I started, Jen, the prior director to me, had gotten a bid for ADA accessible asphalt pathways at Ferry and a couple of other places. So there was an ADA parking spot installed at Ferry Street. There was one installed at Perry Hill Park. So there is asphalt, 4-foot wide asphalt pathways that do connect to the bathrooms there. It's if you can kind of conceptualize it, basically a couple of feet next to the shade structures where the bathrooms are located.
So the bathroom. All right. So I know this. So the bathroom we're talking about next to, I mean, adjacent to this playground space is the bathroom itself. Did that undergo accessibility renovations, or?
I'm not familiar off the top of my head. I can certainly do
Yeah.
some research, but I'm not entirely sure.
Okay. So is it along an accessible path?
Yeah, so there's a 4-foot wide asphalt path that connects to the main. There's a main path that goes basically from the parking lot next around the playground and to the dugouts.
Right.
It does connect to the concession stand, but also the bathrooms.
Okay. And then another question regarding the pathway. I thought that at one point, and this may have been temporary until it got paved, there was rubber matting um, that
Yeah,
had
so
been,
that was
was that
temporary and replaced
that
with the
pulled up?
asphalt.
was that pulled up?
Yes, it was.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So we're actually keeping those as a backup for on the off chance we have another facility that opens, field facility, and we don't have, asphalt's on the cards at the time. We've also been talking about using it as a temporary fix for any type of events where we use, let's just say, like the outfield where
Right.
Ferry doesn't have really an accessible space, but if we did an event, we could use those
Okay.
for wheelchair accessibility.
All right. Thank you, Adam. And then just as an aside for a future time, prior to you coming on board, there were other parks where that was laid down and has been completely overtaken by earth, and
Yes,
those are literally under the earth now. And so let's hope that's somewhere in the works to.
Yeah, it's on Daryl's when he has time project, which is very
Okay.
few and far between,
Gotcha.
but
All right.
it is on his plan to keep that
All
in
right.
mind. So,
All right. Thank you.
all right, great. So, the next couple of images are just different views of the property, just depending upon the space, and it's just circled all of the different elements based on their colors. This is again just a bigger picture of the entire shot. So to give you some frame of reference, where the drums are on the left near the slide, that's kind of the front part of the playground that's closest to the bleachers. And then the far end where the 6 months to 2-year-old structure is kind of close to near where the fence is near the street. So just kind of give you an idea of how to picture it, and you'll see an aerial view of what that looks like in the next slide. So this is again looking from the sky down. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see that 6 month to 2-year-old structure, and then the red marks just show with any playgrounds, they delineate what's called a safe zone. The safe zone basically prevents kids from getting hurt. So those red lines mark basically that there's no other structures that are around that would cause harm to any other kids. That's like the ASTM basically sets, I'm blanking on the acronym spelled out, but they basically set the parameters of safe play space for all equipment, depending upon if it's a slide or a swing. But that's kind of what those red lines are. And then I just put this here as well, just to highlight that there are 11 accessible ground level components that are available to kids at this playground once it's renovated. So again, in the effort of trying to be as inclusive and accessible as possible, 11 is better than basically 0 right now at that park. So it's a huge improvement. So And for those that are familiar with Ferry Street, you can kind of see in the picture in the bottom left, there's a tan square. That's an additional shade structure that will stay on the property. So there'll be 2 shade structures now. You can clearly see Roger here, that big brown square on the right, that's the bathroom. So it's pretty close.
Yep.
Any questions about this rendering at all, or any questions about the ground level components or anything else?
Yeah, I have a question. Has there been any thought to any of the, at Norcross, same with that, South Street, they have like the tactile boards, inclusion of those? 'Cause just looking at this,
Yeah.
there is
So
some
that's-
ground level stuff, but not like for anyone who's a wheelchair user. There is not a lot necessarily they could do compared to, again, even at Norcross where you have the spinny thing that you can wheel into. So I don't know if there's any thought about any of those tactile boards or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely look into swapping out equipment. Basically, we kind of, I didn't give them specifics on what particular equipment to use for ground level components, but I can certainly explore that with them and see what they have available to replace it with.
So I have a question regarding, so this O'Brien and Sons, are they, I don't know if, as they drew this up, are they also the folks who are recommending what structures should be in there? Like, is this accessibility? Is this what they do?
Well, they're not necessarily focused on accessibility per se, but they're more focused on obviously safety. They're the ones that put together the pieces that are safe with the use zones. They kind of take our lead on some things. Of course, I when we put this project together with Emmy O'Brien, I mentioned that we want 100% port in place rubber surfacing. So they're willing to obviously make adjustments as needed, but their focus isn't on accessibility necessarily.
So who would the vendor be? Like, who would you be working with?
Emmy O'Brien.
Okay, so all right, so M.E. O'Brien is, so who's the folks, who else are you working with? In other words, who's pouring doing the design work? You're saying they're two different entities?
It's all in one. So Emmy O'Brien prepared all these schematics, prepared
Okay.
everything. They're responsible for coordinating purchasing of equipment, installing, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all through just them.
No, what I'm asking is that if I'm understanding you correctly, they are not necessarily experts in accessible playground equipment, or not? Like, who internally at O'Brien is going to look at this through an accessibility lens and say, you know what, to Aaron's point, how about this or how about that? Certainly staying within budget, but to end up with a wide enough range. I mean, certainly, yeah, 11 is better than nothing, and it's a huge improvement. But since it hasn't been built yet, who is it then that are the experts? Do we look to other towns? Are there certain vendors that we can work with, or are we contracted to do everything through them?
Yeah. So Emmy O'Brien, I guess to half answer your question, they don't necessarily, I don't think they have an accessibility coordinator or someone that's specifically focused on how to build in more accessible components in playgrounds. Well, I shouldn't say that. Maybe they do have somebody, and I'm not just unaware of them, and that's just hasn't been their focus. But I've been working Emmy O'Brien itself, because they're on the state contract list. It makes the process a lot easier for us to make the park versus if we did this from scratch, we'd have to go through a lengthy process of procurement, which could potentially delay the project or be more expensive. But that doesn't mean that Emmy O'Brien doesn't have somebody who's focused on accessibility on their staff team that can look at this and give this a little bit more of a critical eye and say, hey, is there any way we can get 12 more components or 13 components? But I can certainly reach out to them and see.
Thank you for doing that. Do you feel comfortable that if there are modifications to mix and match, or maybe add a few more structures, that it stays within budget?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we'd have to. I mean, anytime I ask for changes, I'm always like, is this going to make this cost more or less? I of course, whatever would have to be in budget with any of those changes. But for the most part, any changes I've made, I've never heard yes, it's going to cost more. So
Okay.
I'm assuming that most of it, if any changes, will be less, hopefully, more than more.
Thank you.
Any other questions about anything?
Yeah, I just decided some additional questions. So, look, what was the process that went into deciding the play structures? Again, looking at it from being inclusive not only at ground level, but also, being able to go up ramps and things like that. Was that just, I'm just curious, looking at landscape structures, like they do have a fairly large inclusive portfolio, and actually see it in use of South Street, where it is
Mhm.
wheelchair accessible and at a pretty good level there. So I'm just, is there with timeframes and money, like we are said, like, is there room for further discussion or input around, this climbing thing versus this that has a climbing strip space as well as ramps and things like that?
I mean, the project isn't set in stone. One, we need the funding, of course, but two, until I sign a piece of paper saying this is good to go, we can make adjustments. I think due to the small footprint of the park, I think that's why they went with a little bit less, like a wheelchair ramp accessible merry-go-round or whatever. I think that's probably part of the reason. But I certainly can explore those more inclusive elements and see if they even offer them. I mean, Landscape Structures Inc. might have those on their website, but Emmy O'Brien might not sell them or have the ability to get them. But I can certainly look into potentially those.
Yeah,
options as well.
that all makes sense, and I understand it's smaller footprint, so you are limited with the safety zones and everything like that. So, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So, yep,
I had one question.
sure.
There must be some national standards by which these parks can be built as per governed by standards that are acceptable. You know what I mean? Are there standards that are acceptable to most communities?
So there's not really it's not like a building code, like Tracy has like certain codes she has to follow in regards to how
Right, I understand.
egress and et cetera. There's not really formal codes or best practices, of course.
Okay.
Through the ASTM, and that's where, like I said, those safe zones come into play. How many swings can be on a certain structure come into play.
Okay.
And then Emmy O'Brien, all of the staff I've been working with are all certified playground safety inspectors, so they have that knowledge that I don't. I was a
Right.
CPSI for 3 years, so I was kind of familiar with some of it. But they are kind of the content experts in that regard.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Everybody? So just a couple of FAQs we did send out a survey for people, and some people had some concerns. So I just wanted to share the information with you all in case people reached out to you as well about the playground itself. So as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the current playground had about 15 to 20 years of useful life. It definitely got heavy usage, so it kind of shortened that lifespan. Port in place rubber itself gets about 20 to 30 years of useful life depending upon usage. A couple of people reached out issuing concerns about PFAS. I know it's a big conversation about with water, especially. So there were a couple of studies that came out from California, and they indicated, and they did a lot of testing with the port in place rubber material. Basically said that there's far below than 1 part per million of PFAS in the study that they had of port in place rubber, which is considered an acceptable level. And then port in place rubber is also free from any of the other materials that are concerning, like asbestos, formaldehydes, all of those things. So those are kind of the big questions we got from people. So I thought it'd be helpful to kind of share that information as well. If this project does come to fruition, you have those answers as well. So any questions about those facts? All right, so the money stuff, the fun stuff. So the total project right now, as presented, is $392,000 and change. We are funding it in 2 ways. One is capital. So we have a $100,000 request for capital, and the rest is going to be funded through a CPC ask. To give you some background, because I know that a lot of people also mentioned about, why are we going to spend $100,000 of capital when the overall budget's been kind of, a hot topic in town. capital funds are taken from free cash, which is one-time use funds. So by us taking the $100,000, it's not pulling $100,000 from the schools. You can't use free cash as one-time use to operate for your operating budget. And then also CPC. CPC is a fund on top of what you all pay in taxes every year. Actually found out last night from our commissioner. I guess it says on your tax bill how much goes into CPC. So that fund can be used for 4 buckets. One is affordable housing, historical preservation. There's another that I'm blanking on, and then recreation. So obviously this
Well,
playground fits the
open
bill for
space.
open
Open
space, of
space,
course. Yeah. So recreation obviously fits the bill. So if both of those articles get passed at town meeting, we'll have the full funds to work on the project. So any questions about funding?
Okay.
That's all that I have. Do you have any questions or feedback for me about the project? Anything else I can answer for you?
Oh, what's I mean, if you get everything approved, you get the funding, what's your hope for time frame for doing the
Yes.
work?
As soon as possible. We have some flexibility. Obviously, it needs to be. We want it to start, but we might hold off until closer to the end of summer, just to give people the ability. We are running 2 of our summer concerts at Ferry Street this year, so I just don't want to have a concert there and have no place for the kids to let out their sillies while the parents are watching the concert. But in theory, if approvals are done, we could start July 1.
July 1. And what's the build time frame?
3 to 4 months, depending upon weather. And that's an overstatement because Norcross started, they started in March and we were done by May. So
Fast.
2 months, it was quick. They did a really
Yeah.
good job and a quick job. So
And when do you need the letter from us?
I mean, in a perfect
What's
world, I'd
your-
just like to have it in my hand for town meeting in
Yeah.
case, so that's May
Totally.
12th.
Okay.
Just a letter of support would be great. I don't plan on presenting this entire presentation at town meeting, but
Okay.
I'll probably just do a couple of slides and then just let them know that we have a letter of support from the Accessibility Advisory Commission if that's something you guys would be in support of.
Yeah, so Adam, 2 things. It's been my experience that there's such a thing as death by PowerPoint. Typically, CPC articles and cap that I'm not going to say it's going to be rubber stamped, but certainly in this environment, people will start to question things. But we typically have rubber stamped in the last 3 or 4 years about $2 million worth of capital items. So $100,000 among 2 million is a small ask in the grand scheme of things, especially where this is really a priority. It's accessibility related. So I know that finance committee will be. So let me ask you this: so, community preservation committee has signed off on this support, correct?
Yes, yep. So
All
they
right,
have a warrant ready to go for town meeting. Yep.
Okay, and the funding source will be split between 2 warrant articles. I think capital will probably fall before CPC.
Yeah. Capital's usually like the 3rd or 4th article, and then CPC is usually at the end.
Yep. And then, so would we vote and send it just to you and then copy others, including finance committee and CPC, or like, I want to make sure enough eyes see it because the finance committee does put its recommendations forward to town meeting. So I think that even if we send it to you directly, we would probably want to copy others in.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you'd want to, you can attach it to the TA's office just so they have a copy of it. The finance committee would probably
And the
be a good
select board,
one.
and then the
And the select board,
probably.
maybe, yeah, those 3 buckets I think would be good just to get their eyes on it too.
Okay. All right. Alexis, Madam Chair, are you ready for a motion?
I am ready for a motion.
Okay. All right. I move that the Accessibility Advisory Commission support this project and articulated support in a letter to Mr. Lapointe, the recreation director, and such letter to be copied to the select board, finance committee, and community preservation committee, CPC.
I second the motion.
Did I say the town administrator?
You didn't, but you can have that.
All right, yeah, yes, town administrator as well.
I second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? I'll take a roll.
Well,
Tracy,
Madam
go
Chair,
ahead.
point of order?
Yeah.
Point of order.
Sure.
Any discussion, I guess, would
Oh.
be,
Thank you.
I don't have any discussion points, but there may have been others that wanted to tweak that in some way. All right, I'll throw it back at you, Alexis said.
All right. So let's take a vote on the motion before us. So I'm going to just go through the people that as I see. Tracy,
I,
Paula Torno,
Aye.
Aaron Phil,
Aye.
Roger Trahan,
Aye.
Christy Proctor. You're on mute.
Aye.
And Alexis Henry, aye. Hey, Adam,
And-
thank you so much.
Thank you all. And
Sounds like a
I'll be
great
on for a
project.
couple more minutes if you guys have any questions about Big Truck Day. I know you guys are talking about it.
Cool.
So
All right.
I'll
We
hang
are,
out for a
it's on
couple
our
more minutes.
agenda.
But I appreciate, thank you for the letter of support. I appreciate this as we continue to,
It'll be forthcoming.
awesome, great.
So Alexis, will you be drafting that?
I will be, and I'll be actually looking for prior letters of support that we've written. And Adam, I think I have your narrative, so I'll probably extract a little bit of language from. Didn't you send me a document? In addition to the PowerPoint, didn't you send us a document that described the project?
I can send you the CPC application that has I can do that because that's
Yeah, I
where
thought
the write up would have came from. I only sent you the presentation. So
I thought the week before when you asked to come to, last month when you
Oh.
asked to come to this meeting.
maybe I did send you the CPC application. I'll double check my emails, but I can,
If-
whatever I sent you, I'll forward
Yeah.
back over.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, it was a CPA addendum. So yeah, that just has all the verbiage that I sent you. So I'll forward this back over to you.
Love to use words that are already there.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, let's move on. I'm gonna pull up the agenda again. Christy, are you going to do a presentation for us on Title II digital accessibility standards or just talk to us?
No, I'm going to do a short presentation.
Okay, then I will turn it over to you and I will stop sharing. And I think you may have to ask for request to,
So Alexis, if I could just ask you, in to deference to Adam, do you, I don't know.
do you
how-
want to jump ahead to,
I think it may be a good
yeah,
idea.
that's actually probably a good idea. Thanks for, mentioning that, Roger. Yeah, let's just jump ahead to Big Truck Day. Big Truck Day.
Okay, I know that, okay, so on Big Truck Day, I have, I've been in contact with, Mike Kennedy at Center for
Mhm.
Living and Working. He's going to check his schedule to
Okay.
see, his availability. It would be great if he could once again bring his accessible, van.
Yeah, that was a
And
good day.
that really was a great educational opportunity. And if he is, it will allow us some planning for signage. I think people didn't
Mhm.
realize that his van was part of Big Truck Day.
Uh-huh.
And then also some signage and maybe literature regarding what an access aisle is, because that was really part of the physical space. So
Mhm.
I'm awaiting his reply on that. I know that 10 to 11 o'clock is going to be the sensory friendly hour the 10 to noon space. But um, so that was my piece as a follow-up item from our last meeting on Big Truck Day. So I'm crossing my fingers.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments? Roger, I wanted to ask you, I seem to remember when I joined the commission, there was some small budget. Is
Yeah,
there
we
like a
have
little bit of money that we
we
have?
we may have it depending on how I know we have at least $700
Okay,
in an account used for accessibility purposes that is under our control, but we would make the recommendation to the select board who would sign off on any expenditures. And it's receipts reserved for appropriation from accessible parking violations that are $100 a whack.
yeah.
And so we may have more than 700. I think as of maybe a year and a half ago, we had $700 in that account for expenditures.
I bring it up because I think both for you mentioned having some poster, and I'm thinking about it for National Night Out. I think, one of the things that might be nice for us to have is some sort of, swag, like not swag, but, like a table skirt or something that, rather than just us making handmade posters, that's something that we can use at these events that say, Grafton, do you know that Grafton has an accessibility advisory commission? What, this is us, here we are. I mean, I think, we've done, the accessible van, we've done the pause for people, we've done those things, but it doesn't really identify us, but also the effort within the town. And I was thinking, are there some things that we could use that $700 for? That would be reused time and time again, whether we have a
Right.
display or, I mean, we had our Barbie's dream house, but it didn't, it's
Right.
just a thought, and we can put it on the agenda. I mean, we can discuss it now or put it on our agenda for next month, but that might be a nice thing for us to.
Can we in some way point out the effect this commission has had on the town? In
Well,
ter-
yeah, I think it sort of gives people, oh, this is the table for the Accessibility Advisory Commission, just like you might
yeah,
know. Well,
and this is what we've done and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think also along those lines, to what Paul's saying is that there's nothing preventing us from making multiple copies of the 2024 uh, report
Right.
so people can just know most recently what are the things we did in the last year.
Right. Right. And that, yes. But there, also, some visual, like a sign or like
Yes.
I mean, when I present at conferences, you had a table skirt, you have something that sort of identifies you and draws people to you rather than necessarily just handing out a report, something that's engaging and visual,
Right.
From a distance. Oh, let's go find out what this is about. So it's just a thought, and we don't have to spend a lot of time on it right now, but
No.
it occurred to me, let's spend that. So if not, it might go, somebody might slip it away from us.
And it may be more than 700 at this point.
That would be nice.
Okay, Big Truck Day. Anything else on Big Truck Day or National Night Out?
Yeah, National Night Out. I reached out to Thomas Dodd at the South Coast Wheelchair Tennis
Yes.
Foundation, and I'm awaiting a reply from him. And if he's available, I guess part of that would be in conjunction with USA Tennis
Mhm.
or Modified Tennis, and they would have a table adjacent to ours. And
Yeah.
so if that moves forward, I volunteer like I did last year. It was sort of a rain out. Um, to make sure that the physical space at the courts are booked and that I obtained their latest insurance certificate, but
Yep.
I think it was the school department.
Right.
So yeah, so I'll be on it. I'll keep on top of that.
Are there any, are there any other wheelchair sports that we could point out or signify that the public could observe? Like basketball, perhaps?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, that Bay State Wheelers, for example, um, they're a long-standing organization for wheelchair basketball,
Yeah,
and there's basketball courts right up from the tennis courts.
Right.
I think people would learn a great deal about people's abilities who have disabilities.
Right. And one of the things, Paul, that we mentioned it last year at this time about what, at least with the wheelchair tennis, they have what's called one up, one down,
Yeah.
where someone like myself who would be on foot would play against someone in a wheelchair, with the only difference being that they're allowed two bounces on their receiving end, and I'm only allowed one on
Oh,
mine.
that
And
would be
other than
fun.
that, yeah, other than that, everything's totally even.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's part of what the South Coast Wheelchair Foundation does as well, to involve folks who are not in wheelchairs.
Uh-huh.
So you go against one of their athletes.
Nice.
Cool.
I couldn't even go against myself.
Um, were we, Christy, were you planning to reach out to the pause group again for either of these? For National Night Out? Probably would,
No, only for National Night Out, not
Yeah.
for the.
not for
chocolate.
Big Truck, right? Okay. Okay. Anything else at this point on either of those? Either of those. So Roger, you'll let us know if you hear back from,
Yes.
like at the Center for Living and Working. Okay.
Or Thomas Dodd regarding the wheelchair tennis.
And Alexis, I know that Cody sent you like a formal email, like inviting the commission. So just once Roger has that information, you can just reply to Cody directly and just let him know, because
Okay.
Cody's our events guy, so he does all
Yep.
the coordinating. So
Okay.
just pass that message along.
Okay.
All right, awesome.
Good. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah.
Okay, Christy, I think we can go back to you now. So I'm going to stop sharing, and you can.
Okay. Here we go, folks. So I wanted to share the updates to Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And of course, my purview mostly is higher education, but because the institution I'm at is a state institution, a lot of the information I know will apply to the town of Grafton as a state entity. So again, some of this is very applicable, and I'm happy to share some of this. The webinars that I have been to on this topic have usually gone for an hour to an hour and a half because there are so many questions. I am not going to be that presentation. I'm just going to give you an overview, and I'm going to share lots of resources at the end. So please understand that I'm going to do this very easily. So as I start all my presentations, my name's Christy Proctor. I identify as a person with a disability. I have ADHD. And for to describe myself, I have short blonde hair, I'm wearing glasses, and I'm wearing a green sweatshirt. I'm going to talk today about the Title II amendments. And in the slide presentation, everything has been made as accessible as possible. If you'd like to use closed captioning, please place that on, and I will be as descriptive as possible for what is on the slides. You're welcome to use the chat as well if you have any questions. So the two primary laws related to disability are, of course, the ADA, and the ADA has been through several iterations since 1990. Before the ADA, though, we had a very small section of the Rehabilitation Act, and that Section 504 was really ignored for a little bit, but by 1974 and 75, it really became the basis for a lot of what we have been using in education to guide our access needs for students and now for adults. So when the ADA was signed into law in 1990, we did not have the computer technology that we have today. So it was pretty largely ignored. In 2008, there were amendments to the ADA to include more of the accessibility standards that needed to be in compliance, but it still wasn't enough. So last April, our Attorney General, Merrick Garland, published a Dear Colleague letter to everyone in state and federal governments to let them know that there were going to be now new standards for compliance for digital accessibility. So digital accessibility has been deemed an access need due to the amount of information, services, and goods which is transferred to and from people through the internet, through kiosks, through cell phones, through telecommunications, through software. So, really, with an online world, the need for digital accessibility does become an equity issue. It should also contain the structure around privacy and independence. We want people within disabilities to be able to use these structures with the same amount of privacy and the same amount of independence as able-bodied people. Thus, digital accessibility does fall under the ADA as a civil right, and that to be inaccessible in terms of digital accessibility is exclusionary and is not complying with the ADA. So we're looking at not just websites or the World Wide Web, we're looking at mobile apps, kiosks, virtual reality, and we're looking at software. We're looking at both what is being implemented as well as how it's being implemented. And it's very important to note that in the past, we would possibly wait for someone with a disability to ask for an accommodation. But with this new Title II regulation, they've removed that. They want everything built to be accessible so that people with disability can engage and access the information at the same time and in the same manner as others. So there's no delay. There's no waiting for a transcript. There's no waiting for content to be brailled. So I want to really stress that there's a different approach versus back in 1990 when the ADA was first operationalized. The compliance date for the ADA was 1992, and we're still not compliant on everything, and we're 30 years later. So with this legislation, they're saying from the get-go, you have to be compliant. There's no more allowances, there's no more grace. Let's put it that way. So for our new Department of Justice regulations, for entities with populations of equal to or greater than 50,000, you must have either plans or be compliant by next April 24th. So for my institution, because I'm part of this wider statewide institution, we have the April 24th, 2026 deadline. For the town of Grafton, Grafton has the 2027 deadline. So that's a gift. I'm just going to tell you because it is a heavy lift. It is a heavy lift. And it's going to be a costly lift. So you can only, so I'm not going to go deep into exceptions, but one exception is if you do not have to be compliant if you have a conforming alternate version when a technical or legal limitation prevents accessibility. And I'm going to just tell you, burden of proof for that is very high. It covers any web content or mobile apps that we use as a town. So if we are using as a town PeopleSoft for doing our payroll, that PeopleSoft has to be compliant. That infrastructure piece has to be compliant with Title II accessibility guidelines, which is under WCAG 2.1 level AA. So please understand, a lot of third-party vendors are not compliant. And if we choose to purchase them, we are liable for suit, not PeopleSoft. We are liable. Okay. So in the procurement process, we have to be very cognizant and reviewing all accessibility features of what we purchase. I'm going to go into this standards in a moment for WCAG. WCAG is the Worldwide Consortium of Accessibility Guidelines. And I'll get into that in a moment. It's one of my favorite topics. But WCAG has been around for about 25 years, and it's based on 4 principles. It's making sure that content is perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So let me just make sure that I back up a hair. You know, the point of these 4 words is that content will be accessible to people with differing abilities. So whether you have a visual, auditory, physical, speech, cognitive, developmental, language, learning, or neurological disability, that one of these aspects will allow you to have access. And it's really it's really far reaching and there's a lot of things to learn about it. But I hope that as we think about the way we can make the user experience easier for people, um, that when you see how useful this will be, you'll see that it meets the needs of many organizations, it meets the needs of staff, it meets the needs of our townspeople. It will meet many levels of needs all over. But again, it's supposed to really apply broadly to lots of different technologies. So I'm going to go to the next site, and I am going to stop the share. Well, actually, let me go forward for a minute, and then I'll show you the CAG guidelines. These are the best practices for digital accessibility. I want to tell everyone that 2.1 is not the most recent standard. The most recent standard is actually 3.0 or better. So if you are embracing the spirit of digital accessibility, you might not want to stop at 2.1. You may want to really have a target of 3.0. So the best practices are that governments, schools, organizations, businesses, they're going to choose accessible apps, resources, and platforms. And again, by platforms, think of it also as hosts. What hosts your information? Provide alternative text descriptions for all meaningful images. So when I went on the website to look at the banner we have for the infinity rainbow symbol for Autism Awareness Month, there was no alternate text there. I did take a snip of it and I already placed it into our meeting notes before tonight's meeting, and I put the alternative text description in there. Again, it's just a simple practice, but it's very easy to do, especially when you use or have very specific infographics. You can always use AI to help you generate those alternative text descriptions. Provide accurate, synchronized captions for video. Closed caption is a standard now. Not to have it almost seems like it's a naked video, to be honest with you, once you get used to it. Um, and it's really most helpful for people who are hearing. The other place that we have to think about is using good color contrast. And we don't want to use color to infer meaning. We want to use pattern because if we use color to infer meaning, it will not be perceivable by people with color blindness. Also, clear layouts and document structure. There's a lot of templates that you can use in the Microsoft Office template library that can be helpful, especially for inferred orders. And using simple tables. The tables you want to use will allow you to read row 1, row 2, row 3, and row and really just go across. You don't want tables to go across one way, but then down another way, because the way the reading order is set up in your document will only work one way. It won't work. It won't be able to read both ways. And then use descriptive hyperlinks. So at the end of our meeting notes, you'll see I always include the agenda. I not only include the link, but I say the meeting packet link is here, and then I have the link. I don't say click here to learn more. That doesn't mean anything to anybody who really wants to know specifically where the link leads to. And then the last two, use sans serif fonts. I'm big Calibri. I'm a Calibri girl. Okay. I just want to tell you it's my favorite font. I try never to use it less than 14 point. And then lastly, so for example, for tonight's presentation, I use the accessibility checker. And this is completely accessible because I didn't use any photos. I didn't use any graphics. I didn't use any decorative elements. I kept it very specific and in order. Okay. Now, there are people who just can't help themselves. They have to clutter up a lot of things with cool images or things that are really hip or, attracting attention. And that's good if you are able to alt text it all and it all makes sense. So it's very hard to make things accessible when you're layering lots of graphics, including lots of images, and making things look a little chaotic. Let's just put it that way. So the simpler, the better. Okay. Now I'm going to go back one because I do want to show you WCAG and then I'm done. So I'm going to stop this for a minute and go to the website. I have it right behind this presentation. Hold on. My my Mozilla is loading. And no, I might have closed it by mistake. Hold on. Nope, here it is. Okay. Okay. The documents that I'm sharing as resources include the information from the ADA website, and I also have links to this document, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines for 2.1. Now, this is, again, there's been several iterations of this. This has a lot of information for us to know about, and it has a lot of background. But if you come over to the very left-hand column, you can see it gives you all the directions for how to do anything related to making it perceivable, adaptable, operational, and robust. So that's all to your left. Okay. So everything that's needed is very well laid out. I'm just sharing that as a resource because there is a lot and it tends to be a little overwhelming. So if you start here with some of these links, essential components, for example, making sure that your document can be used by a screen reader, by using correct colors, by using the context, knowing how to tag a photo or a graphic. It's very well laid out. And honestly, this is doable um, as you build content. And that's what I really want to share for you for when you're starting content. You can really look at this and figure this out. The hard thing, and this is where I share, kind of unfortunately, if you already have structure in place, you probably need an audit by a company or an outside vendor to come in and tell you what parts of your website, what parts of your infrastructure, what parts of your software that you're currently using is accessible and what's not accessible. And of course, every time you have an audit, they tend to overdo some things and underdo some things. But I have to tell you that anything that you've archived since before 2024 does not have to be accessible unless you have to pull it out and it has to be used currently. So you don't have to go back and make things accessible that have already been used. But social media posts going forward, they have to be accessible. If you have a third party that's posting, for example, if I have a student who wants to post something on a discussion board, that has to be accessible because it's being posted on the school's learning management system. But if I have a student who's posting something on Snapchat or Facebook about the class, I don't have to make that accessible. Now, schools have already had to meet this threshold for compliance to make things accessible, but I don't believe it's been as robust or as, let's just say, as compliant as it could be. But now there's teeth in this. This should be compliant. There has to be a plan, and there's going to be accountability measures. And what I mean by that is that as of the date, every institution, every business, every government, every group has to have someone who's going to be the accessibility checker, and they have to regulate and approve the content that goes up on websites, social media posts, or is sent between entities within a public-private sphere. And if you don't have that person trained to be an accessibility content approver, then you have to have whoever posts, they have to sign a document saying that they did a self-check and they approve what goes up. That alone set a lot of people back on their feet when we heard that first come through from a lawyer. There is a lot of compliance measures that were built into this legislation that we haven't seen in other legislation. The government has smartened up and realized that they needed to set those things in place in order for us to comply with this legislation. So there's a lot more to this. There are some exceptions to this, but they're very hard to defend in court. And again, if you just look up or Google Title II accessibility regulations and look for webinars or videos, you can find quite a bit of information. But it's very imperative to get a team together now to start planning for this. And my recommendation, and Tracy, we can talk more, is that this needs to go in front of the select board. And it's unfortunate. The state of Maryland already has a statewide initiative for digital accessibility in place called MADI. I'm surprised I haven't heard anything about this from Massachusetts. Massachusetts seems to be waiting for things to happen instead of taking a very integrated approach between all the state universities, colleges, and community colleges. I feel like we're kind of out there on our own, kind of figuring this out. But I don't know if you have colleagues at other towns or other places that you can check in to see what they're doing for this. Because now, really, you truly have 2 years. We only have 1 year, and we're just scratching the surface. We're behind. Any questions? Yes.
Well, just Tracy, are people within the town, government talking about this, aware of this?
I haven't heard anything.
Okay, so, that's my first question. Christy, how do we bring this forward and raise awareness among the select board and the town administrator's office, the whole of town government, about what their obligations are going to be under? Because while you were talking on my other computer, I'm just looking around the town website and asking myself, even the piece that I put up, not fully accessible, so.
I would think it's the web master that would have the responsibility to meet the requirements of the law.
But it's
So-
just the web, because I'm just thinking,
Civic-
like, just recently I started using the online payment, tax payment portal. And I didn't question that, from a user experience. For me, it was actually, it was a little complicated to navigate as I'm thinking back about it the first time I set it up. And I didn't ask myself that question, but as you're talking, Christy, I'm thinking to myself, and I'm pretty tech savvy and I use a lot of online portals. How accessible really is that? So I think it goes beyond the town website. It goes right? So do we,
I haven't heard anything.
our commission and a webmaster, I would think, may or may not have the skills around it. Being a webmaster, I don't think that necessarily means that you have any knowledge base or skill base
Well,
in
it's
terms
Civic
of making your
Plus.
digital media
They're
accessible.
yeah, it's Civic Plus. It's a government. They're government websites. So, I haven't heard anything about this. So I don't know if there's any movement to implement this by 2027.
Which comes around really quickly. I'm wondering if this is something we should bring to the select board. Roger, what you had your hand up?
Yeah, it's a follow-up to our last meeting when we first touched upon this. I just want to, as an update, library's already is embarking on this endeavor. And I say this also in the context of, unlike the town website, there's a few external websites that are sort of on their own, where you go onto grafton-ma.gov, the police department brings you to an external. The school department brings you to an external. The library brings you to graftonlibrary.org. So there's sort of these independent websites that are part of the town that operate independently of grafton-ma.gov. So there's a few moving parts, and just as an update from our last meeting, the library is already embarking on their web site that scored somewhere in the low 60s recently as far as accessibility. So, and anyway,
So do we think across all these town entities that there's an awareness of these new regulations?
I would say no. I would
Yeah,
say no.
It would inform the selectmen, for example. The select board needs to know this, but who's going to inform them? Do they search for new rules and regulations? I don't think so.
Well, I think it's our role. In other words, I
Yeah.
think when you really look at it's our role to perform that
To
function.
advise? To
To
advise?
Yeah,
That's-
we're an
it's-
advisory
Yes.
commission, so it really is. I think some of the time there are times that Mass Office on Disability and other entities, either state or federal, will communicate directly. Um, Different initiatives or rules and regs, but I guess it really is our role as an advisory commission to take on that function.
I'm just shocked that the town hasn't heard about it. I mean, in April, we were already starting in May, last May. We were all jumping into webinars on it, and I went to the first conference in July, and 3 huge people were presenting on it. I mean, it got our attention really quick. It didn't matter if you were a private or a public institution. Um, you know,
So Christy,
So-
would you expect that this kind of thing, like, okay, so let's say this commission wasn't, you weren't on this commission and our group didn't even exist. Not every town even has a constituted body. What are the mechanisms, for getting this
legal.
information
town
to?
legal. They get those up. They get daily updates. They should be the ones saying to us, "Oh, by the way,
municipalities? Oh,
aware
by
that-
the way, do you know this?
this came from a highest level. This is Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, sending a letter to all of us
Mhm.
in higher ed and in town and federal governments. This is your new law. This is your new regulation." I mean, the lawyers that we know were all over this. So where's our legal counsel? Why aren't they advising us? I
Well,
don't.
Do we know? I mean, maybe we don't know whether there is action. And
Yeah,
that
That's
maybe
true. Let's
something
give them
is
the
happening
benefit
that
of
we're
the
not
doubt.
aware of.
But
Crazy.
but they should be saying, "Hey, this just came through. Here you go."
But they're not saying it.
Yes, yes, our
Wait, let
website,
Tracy.
yeah, our website does have the accessibility design guidelines. We work to comply with section 508 as well as the WCAG 2.0A. That's under accessibility on the bottom right corner. And that's our website has been designed with the following accessibility guidelines in mind.
So they're going to have to get that increased to 2.1 AA.
It's 2.0 A and AA right
We're
now.
up to 2.1 AA, and the best thing they could do, Tracy, is just go straight to 3.0. And there's not that much of a difference. And if they have 3.0, then they don't have to go back and retrofit. In the spirit of the law, make it as accessible as possible the next time you do the update.
Yeah.
So there may be people within the town that
It's
are thinking about this, are aware of this.
civic.
So this means that within whatever emails you send across the town, you're going to have compliance within documents, document creation, document publication, with emails, with the way you use different apps. It goes much deeper than just our website's compliant. There's a lot more to this. So it's going to be interesting to see how this gets operationalized. The infrastructure is going to be the hardest lift because, to be honest with you, outward facing things tends to get more attention than inward facing things. So you'll have to make sure that your access, databases, Excels, all that stuff that you use for doing inventory and keeping records, that all is going to need to be accessible. Yes, Roger.
I think we found our answer. All right. And I had a hunch, and I think a lot of this heavy lifting is going to be relieved. We have a permanent standing information technology committee with a very robust charge and action items. And I think this all falls under that. It's a 5-member committee with 1 vacancy. Dave Robbins is current chair. So, yeah, if not now, for the sake of time, but uh, in the very near future, if all of us look on the town website under the committee section, information technology, information technology committee, um, it really sounds like they really deal with all the communications and infrastructure and planning that would align with what we're trying to achieve here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So they advise the select board and the town administrator as well. So um, perhaps we could coordinate our efforts.
Has it been on their agenda in the last? I said, has it
Uh,
been on their agenda? I just pulled up their most recent agenda.
Yeah, I don't know, and maybe that's one thing that needs to happen. Um, I think that maybe will be charged maybe with some content, and they'll be more the infrastructure of how this occurs, um, like the nitty gritty of actually what need literally what buttons need to be pushed to really modify what we currently do and how we do it electronically and with communications. But
So I think
yeah, to your point, Alexis, I don't, they're supposed to be meeting once a month, so I don't know what's been on their
just pulled up their
agenda.
most recent agenda. I mean, but I think that's, I guess my question is, Christy, you're raising, there's a new set of regulations. We, in our role, we are unaware of actions that are being taken by the town. It is not our responsibility to implement the regulations. And
Right.
perhaps there are efforts underway. Maybe people are aware. And so what is the next step that we want to take? I mean, you might say, Roger, well, it's the IT committee's
No, I think
responsibility.
no,
but
I think
let me finish
I,
my, let me,
oh, I'm sorry.
let me
I,
just, let
right.
me finish. I mean, I don't think it's, and maybe they're aware of it or maybe not, but I don't know that it's our responsibility to go through their agenda to find out if they've been thinking about this. I mean, what action do we, on April 8th, 2025, today want to say, okay, we are aware of this. We as a committee have become aware of this town. What, um, what is being done, or should we, are you aware, Christy? I'm sure you would be happy to do this presentation to the select board, but maybe it's not necessary. I think right now we're aware of this. We don't know what's happening in the town. We just don't. And so how do we find out without, I'm not going through every commission agenda to find out if they're addressing it. We could assign it to Tracy, which we always assign Tracy things that have to do directly with the town. So what are people's recommendations about like a concrete next step? I don't, we can talk among ourselves about this topic, but talking about it among ourselves will not do anything.
I can inquire. I can
That's probably a
inquire
good
this
first
week.
step.
Yeah, that would probably be the first step just to clarify what the scope is. I have to run I have a class, so I apologize, but what I will do is I will get the information and I can also email you and give you an update, and then I'll see you on the next meeting.
Yeah, let's find out.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Have a great
Thank you,
night.
Tracy.
Bye, Tracy.
Sorry.
Have a good night,
Bye.
Tracy.
That's okay. That's all right. You know, I think that if there is something, a role for us or something for us to do, or again, Christy
Mhm.
providing this overview to a broader audience, I mean, it's going to have limited impact. Just again, us talking among ourselves. It's incredibly informative. It makes me think of a million things. Christy, I'd volunteer you to go half a dozen other people in my own head. But I think, yeah, we should find out what we don't know how much the town knows and what the town is doing.
Right.
Roger.
Yeah, so whether it's you, Alexis, as chair, or you, Christy, who's the subject matter expert here, whether or not the combination of reaching out to the chair of the IT committee and or the town administrator, which I think I'm not sure if Tracy's said she was doing that, but to see where things intersect, how much they know, and rather than dig through, we also don't know what may be upcoming in their next meeting as well. And so
Right.
they may be on top of it, maybe they're not, but just a few people maybe getting together to simply ask that question, either among the chair of that committee and or the town administrator. But I'm not sure. I fully
But I-
understand what Tracy was going to do regarding
I
this.
think she's going to uh I think she's going to investigate I mean, the town, it's a small set of employees within the town. And, Roger, I would be shocked if the IT commission, if it's a group like us, is going to take on the work of making sure that the town is compliant. I think that's beyond the scope of the volunteer committee, frankly. It does. I mean, I would say if it came to us, I'd say like, whoa, hold on a minute. That's like way beyond. That's way beyond our scope of work as.
But
as
we
a
probably
town.
do have an
And
IT
hold on, let me
staff.
finish.
Sorry.
Huh?
Do we have an IT staff member specifically to IT? I have no idea.
You know what? I'll follow up in a conversation with Tracy. I think
Okay.
our town employees. It's a small group of employees. They may
Sure.
have like one team meeting where she can say, "Hey, whose responsibility is this for us to ensure that we are doing the work to become compliant with these new regulations?" That seems to
Right.
me to be a very straightforward type of question. We're talking about, how many town employees are there? It's a handful, right? It's no
Yeah.
more than a dozen. They probably all have a meeting. So let her ask in their team meeting, is anybody doing it? And there may be somebody say, "Oh yeah, I'm right on it. I'm all over it." We don't know. So I think that's a good first step to say
Well,
who, are they aware? And if they're not, and if they're blindsided and say like, "Oh my gosh, we have no idea," then Tracy can say, then maybe Christy, we do, Christy could do a presentation. But the work will not fall to us, and I doubt very much that it would fall to a volunteer IT committee. This is way too big. This is way too big.
We can talk this to death, but we're not going to achieve anything.
no,
We're
I'm
just going to
saying,
talk about ourselves. There's
no,
no
I'm
point
saying
to
it
it.
could coordinate our efforts to advise the town, is what I'm saying, so that we're
But
on
I
the same page.
Yes, but I think what Christy did just for us, and maybe
Right.
a slightly longer presentation, is within the scope of what we might do as an advisory commission to
Sure.
take on then the work. They
No.
got hired. They either have to assign it to somebody on their staff, or they have to hire someone, and they have to figure out what does that really mean. What are the
Right.
tasks that we need to do with all of our digital communication? It's this and this, and as you pointed out, there's a half a dozen different sites. I went when we were putting together the information for disability resources. I went to the housing department. It was like, oh, it's
I
terrible.
know. Yeah.
It's like, this is it. This is our housing, Grafton Housing Commission or whatever the formal entity is. It was like nothing. I'm like, there's absolutely no information here. So it's really varied. And maybe this, the library, the school, maybe they all have their own. They may already have their own task force, but so we don't, we really don't know what's going on. And I'd like it to be that we're effective in advising and, gaining information. But it seems like since Tracy's our liaison, let her take the first step. Kind of, what's going on here before we do anything.
So the city of Worcester has already started doing this.
So stuff may be
Of course,
happening.
they're a city though. Let's remember that.
They're big. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
little.
So yeah. So anyways, but I'm happy to follow up and find out anything. Again, these presentations I've been going to, can I just tell you, everyone across the country is going to these. My friend from University of Washington is there. I mean, we're all there because we
Mhm.
all need this information. And amongst people in higher ed, whether you're accessibility services or you're distance learning or you're in charge of faculty course content, we're all going to the same things because we all are trying to be compliant. So the other step I would just keep in mind for everyone is that there's a lot of training to bring people up to speed on some of these
Mhm.
accessibility features. And I don't think a lot of teachers know about them either. So when you think of our town, our employees at the schools,
Oh yeah,
that's huge.
that's huge. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking of people down at at town hall. Just,
Yeah,
once you get beyond that,
right.
yeah, no, it's actually a huge number of employees. But they may be very aware of this. We
Right.
just don't.
So this is fun to do for all of you. I'm going.
Right, but I don't want to just be talking about it among ourselves.
Yeah.
Let's find out what's going on. And
Well,
if there's a role for us, and by us, I really mean you, Christy.
Yeah. Well, what I'll do is I'll attach the slides to the email I send out as a draft.
Yeah.
And then once we approve, I can move the slides. I'll take pictures of it and move them into the approved meeting minutes. So just to let you know. Okay, thanks.
I'll follow up direct. I'll just give a call. I'll call Tracy and say, you had to leave. We had a little bit more of a conversation after you left.
Okay.
And we thought, if you did this and then came back to us, here's, and then we can talk at our next meeting about here's the reasonable sphere in which we as a commission could operate relative to this if requested.
Okay.
Right? If that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Let me thank you, Chrissy. That is
Oh, you're welcome.
informative and a little bit of frankly blowing my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh. Well,
Believe me, I'm used to this now.
I'm reflecting on, I just for work, I just had to do my annual conflict of interest form. And if you don't need, adaptations or changes to a website or interface to use it, you're not sort of aware. But I've just reflected on 2 or 3 things I did today. It's like, this is fully accessible. I was able to navigate it, but the answer is probably not. I just was on the Amazon website trying to cancel my husband's Amazon Prime account because I also have an Amazon Prime account. We've been paying Amazon twice for several years for something. Let me tell you, it's not easy.
Right.
Can we
So,
move along?
any other new business? Hold on. I just, yeah, Roger. Yes. Are you, Roger? Are you talking? You're on mute.
I'm sorry. Yeah, 5C. So
Oh, yes. Okay. We're coming to the end of our time here, but did you all look at the master plan? I truthfully searched for the word disability or disabilities in that master plan, and I found two relatively limited references. I did not read the entire thing, but there is a drafted master plan, and the public comment period is now until May 2nd.
All right.
Truthfully, I have not read it. And Roger, did you have any?
Yes, as a follow-up to our last meeting regarding the schools, ADA self-eval, I had not dug into that. For starters, all the capital planning and budget planning is very much, in high gear right now. However, coincidentally, after our last meeting, I watched the school committee because they also meet at the same time. And I don't know if it wasn't the superintendent. It was maybe one of the other administrative leaders within the school system who mentioned that the plan for FY27, not this time meeting, but FY27 next year, this $200,000 that they will include in their capital requests for ADA stuff. I don't know what the detail is, but I will follow up on what that detail is and where that how that aligns with their ADA plan. But know that it's not. Had made the comment that I hadn't seen any movement, and sure enough, after we ended our meeting, 10 minutes later, they were talking about it, not live
Okay.
on GCTV. So they're not ignoring it. I just don't know the details of what that $200,000 would include, and what the multi-year plan would be. But I'll follow up on that.
Okay, do you want us to have that on the agenda for next time?
Sure. Yeah, please.
All right. All right, sorry, I neglected to have that specifically on the agenda for
That's okay.
any other new business. Okay, I will entertain a motion for us to adjourn.
I make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Paul Letourneau,
Aye.
Roger Trahan,
Aye.
Christy Proctor,
Aye.
Aaron Phil,
Aye.
Alexis Henry, aye. And then at 8:25, we are adjourned.